Hey everyone, welcome to How to Fuck Up a Startup. I'm Craig, this is Steve.
Hi.
We're doing it on the fly today because we've got our media team demanded that we do, but we're right in the middle of go-to-market, so we're going to figure this out. I'm sure there'll be some interesting stuff, so stick around.
Craig, what do you feel goes into a successful entrepreneur? Actually, and Steve.
Well, it's awfully nice.
Nice of you to acknowledge.
Craig can go first.
Successful entrepreneur, I think, so I think about an entrepreneur, I think firstly we need to define entrepreneur, right? I think if you think about an entrepreneur, I think it's someone, we necessarily get kind of caught in this trap of thinking about entrepreneurs as just founders. Whereas in reality, I think being entrepreneurial is actually just about finding creative ways of solving problems, right? And creating something that is new, exciting, and a way of overcoming something that they foresee as a problem. And I don't think that's exclusive to just a startup or building a business even.
See, I don't see it in the same way. I think of the type of person opposed to like trying to solve problems and stuff. I don't think all entrepreneurs are trying to solve problems necessarily. Cheers, mate. I think they're like pushers. It's something like we started talking about earlier on. People that like to push their own limits and boundaries, and people that want to be successful. Why are you laughing?
No, then the word pusher made me laugh for some reason.
Wow, yeah, okay, you've completely thrown me off there. But yeah, I think I don't. Yeah, I just see it as people that are really just striving for success, and they will work as hard as they need to get there.
Yeah, for me that's a bit too generic. I think like you can have that as a personality trait, but I don't think that per se makes you an entrepreneur. Like I think you still need to combine that with the idea and trying to solve something and create something that solves a problem, right? I think that's kind of where I was coming from. But I see what you're saying. I think if you come back to personality, we talked about it earlier actually when we were talking about the ability to push through and compartmentalize and all those things that we see in ourselves and see in other people, which is that ability to like feel an emotion or feel scared or feel risk or see risk in doing something, but actually still having the ability to go, I know it's there, but I'm still going to do it anyway, you know? And having that ability to do that, I think that's one. And I mean, wait a minute, we should have caveated this from the start where there are lots of things that make an entrepreneur, and I think there are lots of different bits, but like those personality traits to be able to go see something and yet still act upon it, despite the fact that there's a fear or an uncertainty or a doubt, whatever it is.
Fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Love that phrase.
Security industry buzzwords.
Yeah. But I think there is that, isn't there? I think, and we likened it to, you know, doing a bungee jump or something that's more visceral in fear. Is that, you know, you're there on the edge and you're terrified and you've got these emotions that all well up inside you, but you've got the ability to go, but I need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess where I was going at the beginning was like, most entrepreneurs have these things in common as personality traits. Yeah. So what makes a good entrepreneur? In part, are these personality traits. So that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think you're right, and I think what I was saying was then taking that step to being an entrepreneur means taking those personality traits that make you potentially a good one and finding a problem that you've then got to solve.
Yeah.
You know,
honing them against something.
Yeah, that you then take those entrepreneurial traits and you leverage to be able to achieve whatever the outcome is. Answered.
Going to the moon.
Asked and answered.
The Mars, you know what I mean.
How many hours should you set aside to your side hustle a week?
None.
Because
I don't like side hustle.
I don't like the word side hustle. It's a bit of a misnomer. It does sound dirty. It sounds like I've got a job on top of my job.
You see me
If you stop singing that song.
Riding dirty. You said dirty.
Yeah. If you had said what was the answer question again?
No, I hear you. So if you'd said not how much hours on your side hustle, but how much time should you spend building a business that you're passionate about?
Working on an idea about a new business and things like that I would feel completely differently about.
It's the phrase that makes you
feel. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with building something when you're not in a position to spend all of your time doing it. But I do think there's something slightly wrong about spending a lot of time on a job other than your day job.
Yeah. Well, I also think like trying to extrapolate what you're feeling when you hear side hustle is, I feel like side hustle, like you could always have a side hustle, whereas what you're implying is that it's your work of passion for a bit and then it becomes your full-time job because you're trying to build something in, whereas side hustle feels like it's always your side hustle. You're always doing something else, you know.
It's almost like you're not devoting your attention to the thing that is like directly important to you, and therefore like your employers as well. Like, can you honestly say that anyone within your organization that has a side hustle is devoting 100% of their working time to the job that you're employing them for?
And it's a maturity thing, right? Because we talked about this as well, because we've seen people, in fact, we're using people now actually from a contract perspective that have a full-time job and are capable of time boxing themselves, you know, doing their day job during the day, putting 100% in when they're expected to put 100% in, but then equally they've got a side hustle, for want of a better phrase, where they make money in their downtime, and that's legitimate to do, and they're mature enough to split that time, right? So I think it's capable. I think the problem is that everyone then looks as having this side hustle, and people think that everybody's capable of doing that, when in reality, you need the maturity and the discipline to be able to devote time to two different things.
Absolutely.
And it's tough to do that. I mean, I did it when we started the last business. I was effectively full-time during the day, and then I would spend my US nighttime hours building this new business, which ultimately became full-time, so it was fine. But you're right, it's having the maturity to be able to balance those things and the discipline to balance those two things.
It's very similar to like home working.
It is, yeah.
Remote working, like no, everybody supposedly can do remote
Physically
working.
can do it.
Everyone can physically do it, but can anyone really do it effectively?
Yeah.
That's the thing you've got to look at.
And also, I think some of it, and I've thought about this a lot with the home working side, it comes down to like what your job role is and your level of seniority and what you need to do and what the expectations are, right? Because, like, for example, it still sits not well with me that salespeople do everything remotely. Like, you know me, and I think we're both the same way. I really fundamentally believe in the power of face-to-face. I don't think that will ever go away. And it still sits badly with me that a salesperson can just do their entire job over Zoom. Like, I don't think you ever really create that connection, you know? Same with fundraising, actually. You know, we're going through that right now. You know, you get in a position where I can build a certain amount of connection over Zoom, but there's no way of getting away from the fact that at some point, I need to go shake someone's hand, and I need to see the whites of their eyes and need to do it differently. And I think that's where the maturity comes in, knowing when you can go to a certain point, you can get to a certain point, but then at some point you've got to be able to say, well, I'm going to come and see you, or we're going to sit down and do it face to face.
Yeah, that human connection is really important for building rapport, and it's a physical connection of it.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit deep, but you know what I mean.
True.
Like,
it is true.
It really does make a difference.
Well, and you see, I remember speaking to like the sales guys in the last business, and in fact, even way back at other businesses we've worked at, and you can tangibly feel the difference when you're emailing with someone who you've never met face to face. And even though it's an email, you come back from having met that person, and writing an email feels different.
Yeah.
The kind of communication feels different.
Yeah, it's more natural.
We're way off subject now. What were we talking about originally?
We really did.
I can't remember.
What qualities do you look for in a business partner?
Do you want to start with me?
Yeah, you should definitely go first this time.
What qualities do I find? Well, Craig's my
He
first
didn't,
ever.
because I found it.
Craig's is my first ever business partner. So it's really difficult to say that, to be fair. I mean, trust is the biggest quality for me.
Okay, let's ask it in a different way. What have you found in your business partner?
What have I found? Yeah. Balance? I mean, like being able to kind of fill the... I'm not going to say that, actually.
And it doesn't have to be positive, by the way, just because I'm asking. I just meant, like, because you haven't looked for one before.
Yeah.
So what have you found is the kind of way I was trying to phrase that question.
So the biggest qualities that I enjoy or appreciate about Craig...
Enjoy. I love it.
Is that he's
so cringe.
Well, that's why I said, that's why I changed it by appreciate. I think the biggest quality that I appreciate about Craig is that he has this ability to just come up with something that I've already thought of. So it makes it look like...
What?
So it kind of validates me.
That is the most veiled fucking compliment I have ever heard in my head.
No, let me start again then.
He has this... No, wait.
No.
We need to just run on that just for a sec. He has this ability to come up with something that I've already thought of.
Okay, no, let me start again. So it's not necessarily as that sounded. It's more like he validates a lot of what I'm doing. I think we're on the same wavelength, that he'll ask a question to me, and generally I'll have the answer pretty quickly, and that validates something I've already thought of. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it does.
It's like we're in sync with our thinking.
We're coming to the same conclusions, but from different angles.
Yeah.
I think that's what tends to happen.
Yeah, that's way better. Yeah, that's a way better.
I know what you're saying. I think we come to the same conclusions. It's just your ways of getting to those conclusions are sometimes different from mine, aren't they? And we... Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I think that's really intangible, though. Like, I think that's hard to quantify that. What I do think is that actually that speaks to us doing different things, but being focused on the same outcome.
Yeah.
Because actually you take a very kind of analytical, maybe product, technical approach to something, whereas I'll take a more, I don't know, flowery, visiony, like marketing type approach to something. But we come to the same conclusion, ultimately. Maybe with slight nuances, which is even better in some occasions, because it's like, I haven't thought about it in that way, or I haven't thought about it in that way. I think you're right. I think that speaks to differences.
It's a real difficult question to ask me, because I've known you for so long. Well, not because you sat there, because I've known you for so long anyway, and we've worked together multiple times since I left the army. So it's like, I don't really see you as a business partner. You're a mate.
And I think, but I think actually that's an incredibly important point to come to, because actually I think a lot of, and actually this is the same with hiring, because we've just done it and we've just talked about this, which is, I don't care what you say about someone's ability to do the job, and you kind of take it for granted that there's got to be a base level of capability. Like, let's just park that. Of course, someone's got to be able to do at the basic level what you're expecting them to do. So I'm not saying it's at the expense of that, but those personal aspects of drive and determination and getting on and all those things actually are so much more important to me now. And that speaks to a business partner as much as it does at hire, and us having that pre-connection, us having that, friendship prior to doing this makes this so much easier.
Yeah.
Because you're not going through those initial stages of like, who is this guy? You've already got that, and it's just so lucky that we happen to be in the same kind of field of work, and all those things have kind of come together at the right time. But like when you're talking about hiring someone like we just have, I definitely this time, and I no bones about it, I definitely prioritized attitude, will, like desire and passion over real technical capability.
It's funny actually, because this leads me to thinking about like ads I've seen on LinkedIn for jobs, and it's geared at finding a co-founder.
100%.
I think to myself, like, how can
How's that going to work?
How is that going to work? You're effectively, I mean, we're all employees of the company anyway, but you're literally trying to employ someone to be your business partner. It makes it. I just can't get my head around.
One of the things that I've come to realise actually, and I'm definitely nowhere near there yet, but I will be at some point in my life, is, this like, and it's a slight joke, but you think about like, I don't know if you've ever seen the programme Entourage.
I haven't actually.
No, but it's quite funny. It's a series about this actor that then takes all his mates around with him, and they become his entourage because he's making enough money to do that. And that's it's a comedy series technically, but I've thought about that a lot, because actually there's a lot of value in that, in the sense that you pick the people to be around you, not because of their skill necessarily, right? So like I'd hire a few of my mates, to your point, comes right back round to your trust point, I'd hire a few of my mates any day, almost like I first did when you came out of the army, right? And there was a couple of other examples of that where I'm like, actually, I'd rather hire Steve in a known quantity that I know has the skill and aptitude to learn what I need him to learn, as opposed to hire a complete stranger that's supposed to be an expert at what he does.
Yeah.
And there's something about that. There's something about building that entourage, building those people around you that are like, you know, all right, mate, you might be a carpenter, but I know you're completely loyal to me. I know that I can trust you 100%. And I know that because you're going to come on board, you're going to learn to do whatever it is I need you to do. And I'd back you 100% over someone that I've never met before. You know?
Absolutely. I met someone the other week it was for a customer interview, and she said to me, one thing I've learned over this time is that you should never start a business if you haven't got a technical co-founder. And I'm like, I'm not sure I agree with that, because it means that you have to, once again, put the feelers out and find someone. Yeah. If you don't already have them, then you're better off going alone.
I will agree that it's really hard. Like, I remember when I first started, even before the last business that we founded, and I had a really good idea, and I couldn't for the life of me find someone to build it for me. And I did struggle with that a bit. But that's where then I found this world of outsourced development, where it's like, actually just build a prototype, build something that's tangible and you feel like, and then you can show it to people. And actually through that process, you do overcome some of those technical hurdles, and then you can perhaps go and find someone who's less capable but is trustworthy and can come on and help you build it.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Great question.
With that being said, how do you guys get through the hard parts of your business, like the times you actually want to quit? What do you do?
I haven't had one of those.
No, I don't think we have to this point. I think we will have. I think prepare yourself for times when I think we will.
I have no doubt that we'll have those points, but I'm not sure it will push me to quit. I mean, it has to be something really...
It sounds horrendously military, but I don't think quitting is an option. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's never something that,
I would really struggle now to go back to a normal job. Like, I couldn't see myself, I don't want to do it, but like I couldn't see myself doing it. So if this failed, which I don't think it will, you know, there would be something next.
Well, and also I don't see, like, I think failure is I've hated the word failure forever, because I think failure sounds so definite. But like, even bleeding from my last company into this, I never felt like I got to that definitive point where I went, this has failed. Like, because the way entrepreneurialism works is it's like, you have this dip where like that didn't quite work out the way I expected, but then I still see Bleach as a pivot from the old business in many ways. You know what I mean? Like, it was still a journey, this continuous journey where, yes, there was this dip in the middle where that didn't quite work out, wasn't quite what I expected, you know, et cetera, but actually it bled into what this has now become.
It's like the evolution.
It's
just an evolution. And each business, I mean, you could consider each business an entity in its own right, but it's still part of... It's your journey, right?
No, but it is. It genuinely... Totally, and that's why when we were talking earlier, you use that example of like the stock market, which is that stock never actually, well, very rarely does that ever actually disappear off the face of the earth. Yes, it dips, and yes, they then have to take some action and it goes up again, but gradually over time, that trajectory is a positive one, normally. So actually, that's kind of the way I look at this, is that, you know, and even changing jobs, actually. Like, even when I left for whatever reason, and they were all different, it never looked like a stop. There was never a hard stop where I went, this has failed. It just kind of bled into what I did next.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same with me, I think. And I did all right in the army. I wasn't like a super soldier or anything. But when I came out, that's when it's...
But Army Soldier, that's what SAS stands for, isn't it?
Saturdays and Sundays? I don't know. I've not reached that point either. I've like a dead stop, or I feel like the next job I've had has gone down. It's always been an upwards trajectory, sometimes steeply, sometimes kind of less so, but...
And that's even when I think like months gaps, like between the startups or like between jobs. Like, I might have not been technically working, but I never saw it as like a dead stop and a dead start. It always led to what was next, you know? And I think that's, to your point, like, God forbid we ever got to a point where Bleach didn't quite work out. And actually, that's the thing about entrepreneurialism, I think, and it's a thing about starting companies and stuff, is I don't think we look at it as definitive so much. Like, you find a founder who's a multiple-time founder, he's not gone, this business stopped and this business started and this, it all feels like it's blended into a single journey. Like, it all feels like, because there's no definitive, like, Bleach failed. What would happen is we'd find an exit that wasn't one that we quite expected, or, you know, or the business would merge with someone else, or so, you know what I mean? Like, it's never as clear cut as everyone thinks it is from the outside. And through that period, you've gained so much. Like I look back now in a very retrospect way on that last 2 years of building the last business, and actually I genuinely, and it sounds flowery and very Californian, but I've actually look at it now as an incredible learning process.
Oh yes.
Like I remember one of the investors that we talk to regular said to us both when we were Austin last time, it's like, Craig, you've had 40 years of VC experience in like 18 months, and it's true, because you've grown so much, you've learned so much, and you absolutely would not be where we are now if it hadn't been for that negative experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
What was your biggest mistake that you solved in your startup, past or present?
Oh my God.
Biggest mistake that we solved?
That you have solved, past or present?
So I'll have a go first, and then you can come up with one. So I think the biggest mistake we made last time around, which we're trying to solve now, is focusing on the right customer. Like I think
Truly focusing on the right
genuinely doing, not saying you are, but genuinely taking the time to identify who your customer is and what you're selling them. And it sounds really fundamental and obvious, but it's not.
and adding to that, actually producing something that moves, that is doing what they need.
What do you say? Yeah. Because articulate, I think, I've said this quite a few times, but that fundamental process of identifying who your ideal customer is and what you're selling them fundamentally changes everything that you do in the business, from the way that you build the product to the way that you look at how you price it to the way that you finance it.
Engagement with it, everything.
Absolutely everything is then implicated in the ICP, and it's often, you see so many businesses, and this is what we did, see that as the preserve of the sales team. Sales have to decide who they're selling to, right? And we'll just go build the product that we know we've got to build anyway.
Yeah.
But in reality, without that full feedback loop, you're going to fail.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Question answered. You were explaining that on last stages, yeah.
You could do another one then. Do another one.
Well, here's a nice one to finish it off, just to round off the podcast for you guys. Give me the top 5 books you've ever read.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask. I told you not to ask that. Right, so I got one.
It's only read one, but he listens to books.
Got
and
one.
to be fair, so do I.
Jim Collins' Good to Great is an incredible book. So that is a book about his blueprint for not how a business starts, but how lots of businesses can be good, but only a few are great. And he outlines I think it's 5 or 6 different areas where a company can go from, the companies that have gone from good to great, why they're genuinely the ones that get there. And there's some really interesting principles in there. My favorite one is productive paranoia. And in that, he talks about the ability to, it comes right back full circle to our first question, right? About continuing to be productive, but having this paranoid side of you that keeps an eye on the risks and threats. So it's like what we talked about. You can still go and carry out your day job. The fear doesn't paralyze you. You're not sat there not being productive and not selling stuff because you're terrified of the risks. But at the same time, you also don't completely ignore those risks. You know that they're there, and you build resiliency in the business to deal with them. And I love that concept of productive paranoia, particularly in security, actually, which is an interesting one, because you tend to have those security teams that paralyze the business with fear. You're so scared of the shit that's going to happen. Effectively, if you take that to its nth example, the security team in that example would be the ones that say don't use computers, right? Because they're so scared that they grind the business to a halt.
Yeah.
Whereas you want to be that productive paranoia where you're you can still continue to drive the business, but you've got one eye on the stuff that could kill you.
Well, that's one then.
Go on then. No, you've got to go next.
Oh, I've got to go next. Okay, it's a book called...
He's Googling it.
No, because I can't
He's not even listening to me, and he's typing away because he's looking for a book on his...
It's the name. It's called... whatever. It's called Great Demo. It's basically a book that talks through how to do a decent kind of technical demo for some sort of product. I got this off a guy called Bill.
This is not only illustrates why we're different, but also talks to the goodness of having someone who's the opposite to you. I wouldn't read that in a
Dude,
million
my first 4 were going to be completely non-fiction books. So
That's fine, that's even
I'll
better.
go into those in a minute. But I thought I'd put at least one work type book. So it's called Great Demo. It's awesome. It just really breaks down the kind of I don't know, the recipe to do a decent product demo on anything, really. Very good book. Peter E. Cohen. You'll go.
Give me another 4.
Mother 4, Devil's Guard. It's about it's a true story. So it's about an SS battalion or an SS regiment. After the war, they escaped Europe, joined the French Foreign Legion, and ended up going into Vietnam. Epic book. Really, really good, really detailed. What was the other one? I can't remember the name of it, but it's about a Jewish boy. I think he's like 13, and he escapes one of the ghettos, and then manages to work his way across Europe during wartime and escape Europe. I think he gets on like a Canadian ship or a British ship and gets out. That was a pretty good one. You got any more? Okay, there's a whole series of books that I read, full-on sci-fi geek stuff. It's called The Horus Heresy. There's about 50 books in that, and they're still going strong. They're pretty good. No, I'm done now, mate. I'm finished.
Cut to. I used to read a lot of, to your point about military non-fiction, like the books about ISIS. What fascinates me is people's mentality and psychology. So like, I can't remember what they're called, but there's a load of books about why people join the jihad or how the ISIS recruited and that kind of stuff. Like that coming from a military intelligence background, like that fascinates me. To understand what gets people in the mind space where you could genuinely be a suicide bomber, which is it's a horrible subject necessarily to talk about, but to get yourself conditioned in such a way that you can have that ideology and you can genuinely hold those beliefs. As a Westerner, like that amazes me.
Persuasion, and emotional leverage,
and the psyops that go into that and all that stuff, like just blows.
I've read a few books about persuasion and decision making and stuff. Very cool stuff. Body language as well.
Yeah, all good stuff. Thanks for joining us on How to Fuck Up a Startup for another episode. He's been Steve. Say bye, Steve.
Bye, Steve. See you later.
Join us next time on How to Fuck Up a Startup.